an orchestra of maybe 6 people.
It's true, except that I also have to tune up the instruments and rosin the bows and so on.
Talking of which, how are we sounding?
Gorgeous.
Sound okay?
Yep, I think so. There's a lot of background noise from somewhere.
Okay.
Is it me?
I can hear voices and I heard typing.
That's me typing.
That's
Barry, are
true.
you typing again?
Yeah,
like
I can
touch
hear
commands.
voices as well. I can hear voices.
Do you want
Okay,
to, I can
just
switch off
mute my
echo
mouth.
cancellation just in case it's me.
I'll just turn off my mouse.
No, I
and
can hear
see if
background
my-
noises. So I suspect it's John because he's probably not working
Okay.
in a
No, I'm working in the lab
shed
here.
like we are.
I'll turn off my mic when I'm not talking. So let's just try that now.
Brilliant, thanks. Yep. Now.
Okay, I'll have to turn it back on when I'm talking and then try and
will help.
remember.
Cool. All right. Thanks.
Okay.
We believe in you, John.
Uh,
So are we live now, Darian? Did you do that?
Yes, I believe so. Yes.
are we live?
Everyone
The
can hear me
hyperloik in
chewing
here.
my strawberry fruit wind up.
No, he says Coltragasker says no, you're not.
Ha ha ha.
Very funny.
Oh, Peter says we are.
The old knack joke.
Podcast chat. There we go. You are live. Okay. We haven't got any chat lined up. We need some pre-chat.
Got some pre-chat.
I can complain about my. I had the stupid idea that I would just drop in some better speakers in the car before we go on holiday next week. I thought, how hard can it be? It's just, take out the 165mm speakers that are there, install some new ones. Oh my God. If you've never done that before, that is a mission.
Mission speakers or
Ha.
Well, I just got a quote out of Cambridge Car Audio to upgrade the head unit in my VW Caddy van, and they want 3.5 hours at 120 quid an hour.
Yeah, well, that's kind of similar.
120 quid an hour, 3.5 hours to change a bloody head unit.
Well, they
don't
quite.
get our bed for 120 quid an hour, do you?
Yeah, but I'm worth it.
Well, if you know what you're doing, you can do car audio stuff, I believe, as quickly and effectively and as efficiently as, one of us might put together a desktop PC. If you are like me and you dive in with a load of enthusiasm and a toolbox and
A hammer. You've got to have a hammer.
No, don't use a hammer. Use a plastic thing that doesn't leave
Ouija.
marks
Spudger.
when you.
Spudger.
Yeah.
No, it needs a hammer.
Trim tool set. Anyway, no, there's just every single step there is some hazard to, or some way you can get things wrong. You have to learn about. And, it was a real. It's one of those things where you get halfway through and you say, "I should have just paid the money. I really should."
Well, I've got a mate in the pub who will help by the name of Daryl.
And now I'm having trouble with looms and grommets, but
Stereo Darryl.
You can't have trouble with grommets.
I do have trouble with grommets in that I can't get my wires through them.
No.
So I've just posted in the 30th anniversary edition, just a confirmation, 30th anniversary meetup,
blimey.
Confirmation of the date of the Thursday, 10th of October.
Have we decided a time?
Great.
Is it like 6 p.m. to start or something?
So I've had tentative conversations with a pub about.
Is it the Tower Tavern?
Does that still exist?
It's just around the
No,
corner
sure.
from there, actually. You know the ship, don't you,
I think I
Bazza?
can. Oh, okay.
Yeah. The ship.
So, yeah,
It's
they've
tiny.
got an upstairs, but they've got an upstairs room that you can
But
hire.
are we doing a podcast recording there? That's the question.
We are.
We
We
are.
are.
So I said earlier to somebody that we were doing a podcast recording there live. So
Are
I
we
also
gonna-
pointed out that we're having lunch that day as well. Aren't
Did
we?
you? We are, yeah.
So
yeah.
we're going to be
So
fairly lubricated before we even get to this pub.
It'll all be fine.
Are we going to need Wi-Fi and access there? We're just going to record it locally and
We'll
Put it out
record it
later.
locally.
We're recording it locally.
Try and stream it.
No, we are not streaming it. We're
Ian
recording
Clark, I
it.
agree with you. I'm seeing Barry. You're fuzzy. Has something happened to your?
Yes, you are
bandwidth?
very out of focus, Barry.
what do you mean I'm fuzzy?
You've got. You're doing low
You're-
bandwidth streaming.
You're like CGA.
I'm on 720p for some reason.
You're,
Well,
lower
you're
than
way
that.
worse
You're
than
on like
1020p.
240 at best.
720.
Yeah, you're not at 720. You're doing. You're showing low bandwidth.
You're at
You're more,
CGA.
you're more 7 by 20 at the moment.
Yeah.
I
You're
can't speak,
like
can I?
ZX81
I look all right to me.
graphics. Yeah.
Well, you look terrible
Well, we
here,
can
mate.
hear
But then,
you,
well,
so
that's
that's-
relative, isn't it? You look even more terrible than usual. Ha ha
Well,
ha.
Well, if
You
can
have to blame
flip the-
Virgin Media. 'Cause-
Oh God! If you can turn up the bandwidth dial, that would help.
yeah, hang on. There we go.
Adjust the knob.
That's right.
William Kirk has just said about on the 30th anniversary, it's too far from Munich and it clashes with Oktoberfest, which makes me think we should have just done it in Munich.
think that's a
to
pathetic
tag in with
This is
excuse.
just the,
Oktoberfest.
the
mean-
first date of the 30th anniversary tour, right?
Oh yeah, that's true. Good point. Yeah, I'm with you. I'm with you, Darren. That went over my head there.
It was a bit obscure.
Okay.
30 seconds, don't
What the hell are we talking about today?
computers.
You've got one topic, John, but you're familiar with it, which is X
Oh
in
yeah.
Brazil.
Yeah. I've got that. Yeah. I've got the quotes.
It's got the right top. Very Brazilian.
Very
But
stylish.
don't make the obvious joke here.
How is it Brazilian?
Yellow.
They
Yeah,
play
yeah, I
football,
see.
John.
Yeah, I see it.
John Honey.
Okay.
Have you got blue shorts on as well? Because that would complete the look.
1 o'clock.
Hello and welcome to the PC Pro podcast. It is the 22nd of August 2024. I'm Tim Danson, Editor-in-Chief of PC Pro, and with me today I have three merry men. Darian Graham-Smith,
Hello there.
Barry Collins,
First time I've ever been described as merry, but hello.
first and last, and John Honeyball.
Afternoon.
I think you are quite a merry man, actually, aren't you, John? You're probably the merriest of us all.
I wouldn't go that far.
Okay, that's quite a depressed answer. Okay, let us then just kick off with the exciting podcast, and we're going to start with yes, with a tragic story. So you can probably guess what it is from that that intro. Barry, tell us all.
Yeah, this is Mike Lynch, who has been in the headlines for all manner of reasons over the past few years. But this week was part of a number of people who've been caught up in what looks like a hideous accident on a yacht in the Mediterranean. And I think, as we recalled, at 1 p.m. on Thursday the 22nd, there are reports that they've identified now his body from the recovery of the yacht, but I think they're still waiting for the formal identification. But it looks certainly almost certain that Lynch was amongst those who perished, along with his 18-year-old daughter. And they were out on this super yacht called the Bayesian because they were celebrating his victory in the US courts. So Lynch was the founder of a company called Autonomy, which was, 10, 15 years ago was being heralded as one of the big UK tech successes, and arguably still is. Autonomy basically provided it was like sort of enterprise search software that for big companies, big corporates who need to search their corporate databases for internal information and stuff. Autonomy was pretty much the biggest player in town, and Autonomy and Lynch became very rich on the back of it. And that eventually led to them being sold to Hewlett Packard in 2011 for an extraordinary amount of money. In fact, they ended up, HP paid almost 80% over the value of the company at the time, the listed value of the company at the time, which even at that time people were saying was an extraordinary premium to put on Autonomy. But HP decided that it was a piece of software they must have. And then in pretty short order decided it was a piece of software they'd rather not have because they very quickly were writing down the value of the Autonomy purchase, accusing Lynch and his other executives of inflating the revenue and profitability of the company, basically by attributing sales that either didn't exist or were attributed to other items, not the software itself, without going into too much detail. Enter a sort of 10-year period of extended court cases where both the company and Lynch himself were being basically pursued by HP to start with, and then the American government. So Lynch went through a long period where the US were trying to get him extradited. They eventually did. And as of March this year, he was involved in a court case where he was being prosecuted in the US for effectively overseeing a fraud. But he got off, or I say got off. He was found not guilty of all charges earlier this year in June. And that, seemed to be it. His reputation was largely restored, although it has to be said that Autonomy and Autonomy executives have been found guilty both in UK and US courts of some malpractice in regards to the sort of valuations they put on their company. So it's not exactly a clean slate for Lynch, but he was certainly on his way back in terms of reputation. And then tragedy has struck here.
Yes, and it seems, I know I've been listening to various BBC reports about it as well, and I know that he was interviewed by the BBC a couple of weeks ago. It was very positive, looking forward to being welcomed back into the technology world, particularly in Britain, and developing new things and restoring his reputation, like you said, Barry. And there's also an interview published in the Sunday Times along very similar lines. So he was, and there's an irony that he was talking in those pieces about that. He saw this as almost like a second opportunity, a second life. So he was really looking forward to what was happening. So it's it's always tragic when these things happen, and when we shouldn't forget all the other people who lost their lives as well. But it does seem to be particularly tragic timing, and I don't know when is a good time to mention the other, we believe, coincidental death that happened over the weekend.
Well, yeah. So Lynch's co-defendant in the trial in the US, a chap called Stephen Chamberlain, obviously also cleared alongside Lynch of wires and security fraud. He was involved in a car accident in Cambridgeshire the weekend that's just gone, and was killed in that as well. So, I mean, right now there appears to be no link between the two incidents. This appears to be, on the surface, two incredibly coincidental, tragic accidents. But to say that is a coincidence is putting it mildly.
It is, and then you've had the interview with the CEO of the company that made the yacht who've said that this boat was unsinkable.
I've heard that before.
Yeah, that's true. And obviously he's got his own motivation there. But this is going to, we know this is going to feed. I don't want to say conspiracy theorists either, because I think they're, you do have to look at things when this happens in quite succession. But we need to also remember coincidences do happen. It's the way of coincidences. So yeah, I'm personally, I'm very much believing it is coincidence at this point in time until it may be proven wrong.
I'm very hesitant, obviously, to promote what is just a conspiracy theory, but it was interesting to me because I still have a couple of friends in the Cambridge technology industry, and some of them worked for Autonomy. It was quite a company that sucked up a lot of people who graduated around the same time I did, and they grew with it. So I had the opportunity to talk this morning to a colleague of mine, a friend of mine who was a colleague of Mike Lynch, worked closely with him for many years. And I was quite fascinated because I said, what should we know about Mike Lynch? I wasn't really familiar with him except from the court case, obviously, that made the headlines, however many years ago it was. What sort of person was he? Why should we know about him? What was his significance to the UK tech industry? And the answer I got, I was expecting my friend to say something like, well, he invented this, or he promoted this, or he was at the head of the company when they made this breakthrough. What he actually said was, and I quote, because this was on WhatsApp, so I can read it out verbatim, well, he didn't take prisoners, but he had a way of getting things done. No decision by committee, just made decisions himself. He would go all in, maybe the wrong phrase at this time, but certainly not afraid to mess with the status quo. This meant he made a fair few enemies. And I thought, well, isn't that curious that that's the first response of somebody who knows him or knew him personally. I mean, I'm not suggesting that there is a conspiracy, but I can very easily understand how those who were involved could see one, bearing in mind the sort of person who it appears, or the sort of impression that Mike Lynch maybe made on some of the people that worked with him.
That said, it's very rare to find a benevolent CEO. I mean, what you're describing here is the characteristics of pretty much every tech CEO you can name. So I wouldn't be too surprised by that.
Yeah, although at the same time he was working with he created Darktrace, didn't he? Didn't he co-found Darktrace?
So certainly involved.
Yeah, so you're going to make enemies there, aren't you? At a security company at that kind of level. So I don't know. We just don't know. Basically, is what we'll boil down to. John, I take it because you obviously live near Cambridge. You're kind of you have contacts in that world. Any whispers from?
No, and no whispers. And I think it would, there's conspiracy theories that are swirling around at the moment, and I think we should put those in the great big bit bucket called conspiracy theories. Clearly, there was a freak weather event. Everyone saw that. There are claims that maybe the thing at the bottom of the boat wasn't fully extended for stabilization. There's claims maybe that there were port hatches left open. This is all absolute conjecture until it's been proven, and it's not worthy of repeating. And as for some sort of hot hit squad going out taking out him and the other guy on his bicycle here in Cambridgeshire, I think that's extremely left of field. It's not impossible, but I think it's extraordinarily left field here, and I think we should certainly let things lie as they stand. I mean, Autonomy was a very interesting company, what they were doing, and it goes back to the work of correct me if I'm wrong, it was Reverend Bayes, wasn't it, who was a pastor and mathematician in Cambridge, I think, in the 18th century, who came up with the idea, Gary, and please do a quick wiki for me, who came up with the idea of basically summing the probabilities across a set to come up with an overall probability. That's where Bayesian probability came from. And he named the yacht Bayesian after the Bayesian logic, which was one of the fundamentals, was what was behind what Autonomy did, which was basically to search across all sorts of disparate data types and then find the patterns and find the joins up. Darian, please give me a...
I can confirm Thomas Bayes, the statistician and philosopher. I never knew he was a Presbyterian minister, but
there you go. You see, I remember that bit in my head. And it was 18-something, wasn't it? And I think he was in Cambridge.
A little bit earlier, actually. 1761 was when he died.
Okay, and whereabouts? Let's just have an instant bit here. Anyway,
he got around a bit, but I'm not seeing the word Cambridge.
Okay,
I'm afraid.
no worries.
Edinburgh.
Okay. Well, certainly here in the UK is the important point here. But I guess you can argue that it'll either be here or in Europe in that kind of time frame. Anyway, and Autonomy. I mean, I have good friends who were running Autonomy at the time, and they said it was astonishingly good at finding stuff in the mass of corporate data that they were dealing with at the time. It was a very much a hot ticket back then. It was expensive, but the value, the return on investment was clear, and it was something that people who got into it and made it work really did get benefit from. So that was a good thing. HP bought it probably for all the wrong reasons. It was a flagship thing. HP were trying to get into the services market. They could see themselves slipping behind what was happening with where Microsoft was trying to go with data center and so forth, and they bought into Autonomy. They paid a large amount of money for it. Whether the money was right or wrong is a matter for the accountants, but certainly I remember at the time people saying it was a lot of money, and also saying, how on earth was this going to work? It was never going to be a good fit into a company like HP, and it was claimed that it was actually sort of a big thing by Carly Fiorini at the time, who was the CEO, and it was her sort of pet project to try and stamp herself on Wall Street. It doesn't matter. At the end of the day, it all went pear-shaped very quickly, and they wrote it down. There's a whole bunch of thinking here that there was internal warfare inside HP over the valuation and so forth, and the write-down was just a whole bunch of internal politicking, and then the court cases on the back of this, because you can't do that kind of a financial maneuver without your investors' lawyers getting involved.
John, can you just give us a quick idea of where you think, and this is a deeply unfair question, I apologise in advance, but where do you think Mike Lynch does stand in terms of the the tech entrepreneurs of the UK? Is he right up there?
Oh, absolutely. No question at all. You could, with hindsight, say he should never have sold, or the shareholders of Autonomy should never have sold. But then we could say the same about Arm, couldn't we? That should never have been sold out as well. We're very, very good at creating this kind of stuff in the UK and then not following through with it. And maybe selling to HP was entirely the wrong thing, but there was an enormous check being waved in front of them, and it's hard to argue that it was that they should have ignored the payday. But no, there's no question. I think this thing had dragged on for vastly too long. I'm not an accountant and I'm not a lawyer, but those who I know who are say that a lot of the confusion happened between the differences in corporate accounting practices between the UK and America, Sarbanes-Oxley and so forth, where in the States you can't book value until you've actually delivered the thing, whereas here in the UK you can. And maybe this was a fundamental difference of accounting process. I don't know. I am not an accountant. I've heard this,
No.
and maybe it's true.
Yeah, I kind of want to draw a line under that, if that's okay, because I don't feel like we have the real.
No, we don't. No, we
knowledge
absolutely,
to talk about it.
certainly don't. But I mean, the problem here is it is a tragedy of him, dying on his yacht these last few days, and members of his family. I believe his wife has got out alive, and thank goodness for that, and the other people. But there was also head of, was it Morgan Stanley or one of the big banks? Was
JP
also
Morgan.
JP Morgan was also killed in the boat tragedy. So this is just the latest twist in a really a really Byzantine story, which had already gone down in the history books, and this is the latest chapter in the strangeness of what's been going on, and as you say, a complete tragedy for all concerned.
Okay. And just before we do move on, I just want to say briefly that this is to, we should mention that Cambridge is a real hotbed of invention. And the fact that we've talked about ARM, born in Cambridge, Autonomy, unless I'm very wrong, that was born in Cambridge, is just an astonishing place. And in terms of
Silicon
what it's
Fen, they call it.
Indeed, and it's just I always find it very just absolutely remarkable that Cambridge does this so successfully, and that Oxford, for example, does not. When was the last great tech company that came out of Oxford? But I know you're a huge advocate of Cambridge, Darian, as a graduate of it.
Yes, indeed. Well, not only a graduate, but yes, I have many friends who are still there and still working, previously for Autonomy. So I still feel a considerable connection to it. So, yeah, I say big up the Cambridge, the Cam Massive.
Yeah, well, definitely. I just think it's worth actually praising its entrepreneurial spirit. Anyway, let's move on to the second story on the agenda, which is with you, John.
Yes. Well, there's. The latest story of what Mr. Musk has been doing with X/Twitter, you know how much I like to call it Twitter, if only to annoy him. And there is a running battle. And it's a very interesting topic because it opens up a whole can of worms about where are we going to go forward with this, which is that basically there is a judge in Brazil, or the Ministro de Supremo Tribunal Federal dos TSE. There you go. A guy
Who
called
replaced John with the fluent speaker
I know
from Brazil.
Amazing,
That's
really.
remarkable.
Alexandra de Moraes, and basically there has been, according to Twitter, who have published the letters, that they have this guy in this judge in Brazil has been trying to get information and about certain Twitter accounts and get accounts shut down and get access to them and so forth, and has basically ordered Twitter to do this. and this has not gone down very well. Now, let's for one moment put aside the whole Elon Musk, Trump politicaling stuff in America. Let's just park that to one side and concentrate on Brazil. And so basically, they posted the letter, which is that they have said that. Let me find the exact quote here. The letter from Twitter says, "Last night, Alexandre de Moraes threatened our legal representative in Brazil with arrest if we do not comply with his censorship orders. He did so in a secret order, which we share here to expose his actions. Despite our numerous appeals to the Supreme Court not being heard, the Brazilian public not being informed about these orders, and our Brazilian staff having no responsibility or control over whether content is blocked on our platform, Moraes has chosen to threaten our staff in Brazil rather than respect the law or due process. As a result, to protect the safety of our staff, we have made the decision to close our operation in Brazil, effective immediately." What they have basically done is they've closed their Brazilian office. Now, this does not mean that Twitter X has ceased to work in Brazil, nor does it mean that Twitter X is blocked in Brazil. Brazilians can still quite cheerfully tweet to their heart's content. But what it does mean, of course, is that as a business, it's shut down in there, and therefore I would imagine it's not possible for or not so easy for Twitter to get revenue from Brazilian organizations. Now, the thing that's slightly interesting here, of course, is that, well, where is the office for Twitter? Where is your contract with? And it turns out that the European side of Twitter is actually run through a company in Dublin. You could argue it's a shell company. Maybe it is. Maybe there's lots of people who work there. But given that Elon Musk fired 75% of the staff, I can't imagine there's many people left in Dublin. But legally, our contract is with Dublin. But for the rest of the world, it's with Twitter in America. So they've closed this office, and the strop goes on, and Elon is saying that under no circumstances are they going to hand this information over. So it comes down to this fundamental question, which is who controls what happens in the country? Is it extraterritorial? Are companies like Twitter, or let's pluck another one out the air, Google or Microsoft or HBO, one of these global corporations? Where is the legal basis of the operation that they provide in a country? It's going to be very interesting to see what, for example, the EU has to say about this. And
so why do you think that matters, John?
Well, it matters because at the end of the day, if a service is being provided, I mean, this is a row that's been brewing for 30 years. This is nothing new at all. And it's just the latest incarnation in this problem, which is who decides what happens inside a country? Is it the legally elected representatives like our MPs, or is it a board of directors of a company in a different country? How are we going to police this? And this is just the latest in a long thing. Now, I have no idea whether this judge in Brazil has got reasonable grounds to make his claims or not. As I said before, I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea. And I'm sure he would claim that he does, and I'm sure it's absolutely clear that Elon Musk says that he doesn't. And I'm not getting in the middle of that argument, thank you very much. But where is this going to go? Where is this going to end? Is this going to get worse and worse? I don't know.
Barry?
I mean, always with Musk, it's hard to tell how much is just pure brinkmanship, how much are they actually serious about. I think it's going to be interesting to see what happens over here, because it's certainly given his output over the past couple of weeks as well, it seems Labour is gearing up to make the Online Safety Act even tougher, if you believe the rhetoric coming from the cabinet. So. And already within that, there's provisions for Twitter to be fined up to 10% of its global turnover for transgressions of the Online Safety Act. Now that, I imagine, is going to get challenged at some point, because, as John says, like, is there really jurisdiction for the UK government to fine a company 10% of its global takeover? That, to me, always seemed like a stretch, to say the very least, and I think that will end up if anyone ever does bother, finding Twitter or X, they will doubtless challenge that through every court in the Northern Hemisphere. So I think we're going to see a lot more of this coming up, because I think especially X, but to some extent the other social networks, have taken a rather casual approach to the sort of laws and regulations that exist across the EU, across the UK now, to some extent in America. And I think we're on a collision course. It'll be interesting to see how these things shake out.
I think Elon Musk urgently needs his wings clipped. I mean, who the hell does he think he is? He imagines that he can sit in California and just dictate what is acceptable and legal. I mean, he's been basically saying that what the Brazilian judge asked him to do was illegal, because he just cannot comprehend. I think perhaps because he is the richest person in the world, and he is therefore surrounded by people who will tell him he is right and he can do whatever he wants, he just perhaps genuinely does not understand that there are limits to his power, to how far his edict runs. And I think it will be better for all of us the sooner he learns that it is entirely up to the government of Brazil. And we may disagree with Brazil doesn't have necessarily a political record that we'd all feel entirely comfortable with, but nevertheless it is a fundamental principle of the rule of law and beyond, that the government decides what goes within its borders. And Elon Musk just sorry.
Yeah, so historically, Darren, I completely agree with you. I think the next 50 years are going to be quite interesting, because what we're going to see is probably that these huge companies, they're so powerful now, the Apples, the Metas, the Elon Musk's kind of coalition of companies that he owns, that they are more powerful than arguably Brazil or the UK.
Well,
and
they're not.
Or
if they are, it's only because we allow them to be. And we need to push back on that, because otherwise you end up in a worldwide corporatocracy, if that's a word.
Well, I've seen a couple of sci-fi dystopian movies, and I'm pretty sure that is what's going to happen. All right, there you go. That's my prediction for that one. Let's move on to the next story with a bit of after that sci-fi speculation. Something very. One sci-fi story that is coming is about Total Recall for Windows, Darian.
Yes, so this is the Windows Recall feature, which was supposed to be, if I remember rightly, one of the headline new features of Microsoft's Copilot Plus PCs. This was the thing where it would basically watch what you were doing on screen and remember it, and then and ingest it and understand it, and then you could say, what was that web page I was looking at last week that had a picture of Alison Brie on it or whatever, and it would tell you. It would know. It would be your personal store of information about what you've been up to. Now, this obviously, we'll remember, caused quite a kerfuffle because people didn't like the idea of their computer spying on them, and in particular, they were very concerned that the information that was being compiled about you and your activity could be hacked, could be leaked, could be shared, could give away that you've been looking at pictures of Alison Brie. So this was in the end.
I don't know who she is. You're going to have to tell me.
Do yourself a favour and Google it. So this was withheld from the initial launch of Copilot Plus PCs, and Microsoft said it would be coming as a later add-on. Now, we already kind of know most of what Microsoft has been working on to make it a bit more palatable. So when Windows Recall finally does become available, it's going to be proactively turned on, as in it will not happen unless you click the yes I want to use recall button that will come up when you first log on. It will require Windows Hello. You will have to authenticate as yourself using biometrics or some other approved system before it will let you view or get information from your timeline of stored information. They are, of course, going to... There we go. Thank you. Lovely picture of a slice of sloppy brie on the Discord. Thanks, Barry. Just
to be absolutely clear for people who aren't watching live, Barry has literally put up a slice of brie rather than anything else. Carry
Yeah,
on,
it's
Darian.
it's a cheesy joke. The database of captured images and information and the search index of that will be encrypted. There will be an icon on your system tray telling you that Recall is active and warning you when it is recording information on your screen. You'll be able to go in and pause it or switch it off or remove certain content from your Recall database. So basically, it feels like they've brainstormed, every possible objection, which seems like the opposite of what they did when they first came up with the idea, and tried to come up with a way of addressing it. And I have only kind of two concerns remaining now. The main one is that basically it feels like now actually using Recall or the experience of interacting with Recall is going to be fiddly enough that people aren't going to do it. They're not going to trust it, or they're not going to trust it because it comes with so many caveats and like security warnings, and they're not going to want to mess around with going in and authenticating and keeping an eye on the icon in their system tray and so on. I think it was a brilliant idea when it was something that was effortlessly available, and you could just say, "Hey Cortana," or whatever the current. I don't even know how you interact with a Windows machine right now. But if you could just ask it a question straight off and it could answer straight off. But since that's not acceptable, I think maybe the idea just isn't going to work in its current, admittedly much more secure form. The other thing is, they're making it available in, to be fair, a reasonable kind of measured way. Rather than rolling it out, they are putting it in the Windows Insider program first. But Windows Recall only works on Copilot Plus PCs. It leans on some of the security features of the ARM platform, and it leans on the 40 TOPS minimum AI capabilities. So in order to try it out, I mean, it probably will reach general release at some point, but in order to try it out when it does become available, which incidentally is supposed to be in October, they're really taking their time here, you are going to need to have a brand new Copilot Plus PC and choose to install untested Canary code on it. I don't think there are going to be all that many people out there who are doing that.
No, and the point being that actually it will be January, probably February next year before this actually gets dropped into the main release of Windows. And as you say, Darren, I do think Microsoft has confused matters here by creating this separate stream of features that are kind of available on Windows, but you need to have Copilot Plus PCs. Who really is going to know all this? I know, in 5 years' time, it won't be an issue. Every single computer you buy, laptop or desktop, will have an NPU, will have the TPM that allows you to run these things securely. It just gets offloaded to the NPU. You don't really notice it. But for the next year, you're going to have some so-called AI PCs that don't run Copilot Plus. You're going to have some laptops and PCs that don't have any NPU in them whatsoever. And
I can just picture.
The world is...
I can just picture what Lee Grant must be thinking when he's listening back to this. He's going, I have people coming into my shop already saying, can I run this feature, that feature, and the other feature? And it's just going to add to the confusion.
So the only good news, if you can call it that, is that realistically, I don't think anyone is getting extremely excited by so far the Copilot Plus features that have been promised. I've written about them in the magazine and write about them again in the magazine. It's going to land on people's doormats in a week's time. But the co-creator, this idea of sketching along and the AI enhanced image appearing, or the live, real-time translation may be more useful, but still kind of a minimum, case. But I'm just not convinced that people want it. Darian, you have something you want to say?
Just that's exactly right, and that's a big part of it. Windows Recall was, I think, for me, and I think for other people we talked to about, the best feature, the key defining thing that made Copilot Plus actually smarter and more desirable than a bog standard, £300 laptop. So not having it and then having it, rolled out latterly to some systems it's just more of a mess.
John, you had your hand up as well.
Yeah, I think you could argue that the whole release and handling of this has been a bit of a mess. It was kind of supposed to be
You
there
don't need
as
to
a
argue it, John. It
no,
was a
no,
massive
no,
mess.
no. I mean, no.
I
Oh,
haven't
yes.
seen a bigger mess.
Oh, I have. Trust me. No, you could say it should have been there from day one. You could also say that in this new era, these things are going to be incremental releases and so forth. Personally, I'm falling on the side of it of being badly handled, badly explained, and so forth. And I'm hearing that the Qualcomm. I actually was checking this morning. The Qualcomm Dev Kit box, the desktop unit, I believe still has not shipped. And that's like months late. And although clearly it's shipping for the Microsoft laptops that have got it in and so forth, and that's good, and that's an interesting platform. It's hard to see why they can't get this out the door. It's hard to see why there isn't a Dell desktop sort of Mac Mini style unit based around this, ready to ship, ready to go out the door, and you would have corporates lining up to insert this into their hardware refresh. So the whole thing is just turning into a bit of a damp thing. But now, on the flip side, I'm sure it will come, and I'm sure the criticisms that were rightly raised about what happened in the beta builds or the alpha builds that came out will have been fixed. I'm pretty sure that what will actually come out in the initial stream will not have an unencrypted database, for example.
Oh, no, it won't do.
It won't.
We
do,
know it's going to be
because-
encrypted. All this is confirmed.
All of
So
that's going to be fixed, but I don't know. I just wish that they could do a little bit more coherent and a little bit more joined up. And the problem is that it's easy for Apple to get their story correct because they make everything. They make the operating system, they make the dev tools, and they make the hardware. Microsoft is producing one component of this and trying to roll out new features onto it, and that's a whole bunch more difficult, as we see.
Well, let's not forget Apple's got its AI problems of its own. You know, the features that were meant to be and were certainly unveiled as the big new thing about the next version of iOS and macOS, they're being absolutely dribbled out, and the ones that are going to be here for the September launch are, almost inconsequential. So,
Or not here because they've said they don't feel they can ship it in the EU. So we'll have to wait and see.
Well, even in America, they're not shipping the full
Yeah.
the full list of features that they announced, which is very rare for Apple to not
Yeah.
have stuff. So, I think this is a problem not just because Microsoft doesn't control the hardware stack. As for recall, my theory is that they were planning to introduce this as part of Windows 12, and that would have been a complete point of differentiation from Windows 11. Then they couldn't make that work. They've ended up with this awkward Copilot Plus separation, which nobody really understands. I mean, as you write in, I don't want to spoil your reviews, Tim, but the amount of discounts we're seeing already on those Copilot Plus PCs suggest these things are not flying off the shelves in any great numbers. And why would they? There's nothing in there for consumers to get excited about in this current branch. And I suspect Microsoft has got a lot of very upset PC OEM partners because it dragged them all along to CES. It's going to drag them to E3 in a couple of weeks' time, trying to say, hey, look, AI is the big new thing. And what have we got so far? Something that's going to blur the background of your video and something that's going to isolate your sound on video calls. And we might be able to write the odd email for you. It's really basic, boring, humdrum stuff, and certainly not stuff that's going to sell a new £1,000, £1,500, £2,000 laptop. So, whether a recall comes off or not, I think that they may have already queered this pitch for themselves.
I do completely agree with you, by the way, Barry, about Windows 12. I think they should have. That's what they needed to do. They needed to do a big launch, Windows 12. This is a hardware and software launch. You're buying the whole package. Everything comes included. And if you've got something that says Windows 12, it can do all of these things. And then gradually Windows 11 gets left behind because, the hardware does not support the new features that you want people to want if you're, talking on behalf of Microsoft and the manufacturers. So it just seems to be, it's a whole series of dropped balls, as if the ball was covered in Vaseline before it was passed. So I just find it so strange that they've got it so wrong. I also find it weird because I go to a lot of events, and there's such a huge disconnect between what the manufacturers are pushing in terms of AI features, and that I'm talking about everyone. From the AMDs, Qualcomms, Intel, they're all pushing Intel, all pushing AI. Sorry, but the people, we asked a poll in the new issue of PC Pro. Like I say, that will be on your doormat next weekend, hopefully. And that we asked people, what's making you excited about AI, and I listed a couple of the features that are coming out with it, and a few people were excited, but really it's a handful. And remember, the PC Pro audience is the most engaged audience. So if that's the level of apathy about AI, especially on PC AI, that's happening right now, then it just shows you there's such a gulf between where Intel is, where all these companies are, and where the general population is. And I just don't see immediately how that gulf is going to be closed in the next few months, even the next 2 or 3 years. I may be wrong. All right, I seem to have bludgeoned everyone else into silence. So let's move on to the next story, which is actually with me. I won't be too long on this one. This is a story that basically Google has this Team Pixel group where it kind of tried to promote positive coverage about Pixel phones by seeding samples of the phones of its new releases, its new Pixel 8s and now the Pixel 9s, with what they call influencers. So these aren't journalists necessarily, although they do muddy the waters a little bit, but they tend to be people who've got Instagram accounts, who've got popular YouTube channels, and supposedly influence what people buy or certainly think about these brands. Anyway, that's what the Team Pixel was set up to do. And then, in a very foolish move, as part of the T's and C's of getting the new Pixel, these are the Pixel 9s that we talked about last week, I believe. They say in a section of their Google form, you have to go through all this Google form to accept that that you're going to be sent it. So like a T's and C's, and this is called Brand Love. This little section of it, and it says, by opting into this program, do you acknowledge that you're expected to feature the Google Pixel device in place of any competitor mobile devices? Please note that if it appears other brands are being preferred over the Pixel, we will need to cease the relationship between the brand and the creator. Now, they've since withdrawn this particular form, and so you can't sign up for it. They've backtracked massively, but this is a huge problem out there, and it's not just Google where this happens. We know, and it's actually implicit in your agreement with a certain fruity company, that if you give an Apple product bad publicity, you are much less likely to get that product early in the next review cycle. And to the point where even when this is with PC Pro, they didn't want us to. They wanted us to send their preferred journalist to go to a press event rather than my pick or Barry's pick of which journalist should go. And it's just. It's just wrong, and it doesn't do the brands any favors. It doesn't do anybody reading reviews any favors, because how can you know exactly whether people are being frightened not to write anything negative? Because if they write something negative or they say something negative, that then suddenly their partnership will cease to exist with this company, so. Yeah, as William Kirk has put it on Discord, corrupt ? And it certainly, you could definitely level that accusation about it.
This is a wonderfully contentious podcast with the Mike Lynch stuff and now this, isn't it?
Well, we don't pull back on our punches. Barry, do you have anything to add to that?
I mean, there's a degree to. I think. Trying to separate out influencers and journalists, there is some distinction there. It should be a greater distinction there. The thing with influencers is they're often reliant on the companies themselves. They're not paid directly. They're paid by the advertising from YouTube or wherever they're promoting their channels. So they don't have a separate income stream. They're reliant on that level of access. And we all know that these companies have, their select influencers. In fact, and to be fair to many of these influencers, they're often called things like, Apple fan or whatever, because that they're there to sort of hype that company's products and
And because they generally love the products and the company.
It may well be, but it's very difficult, I think, to as a consumer to draw any great confidence from what you hear from these influencers or see. But they still rack up tens of millions of views every time a new product comes out, every time they release a video. So, I mean, and you're right, it happens to a degree in our industry as well. And let's not kid ourselves that journalism is entirely squeaky clean in terms of this kind of stuff. And someone will say in a minute, the easier answer to this is to just buy everything you review, but that's not possible. Not in the finances of today's magazines, I suspect. So
I think even when PC Pro was at its height, we would have struggled to buy all the products that were sent in. And it's one of the the great things about the Which is that they do, but then they're also quite far behind the times by the time they publish the reviews, and so there is no perfect answer to it.
And not without their own influences as well. So it's a really difficult, murky business, and I'm going to stop talking.
Okay, Darian.
Just that one of the things, probably the most shocking thing that's come out of all this for me, because I think we all know, those of us who've made careers in this industry, that there is an enormous gulf between your serious reviewers, whose loyalty is to the readers and to their employers, frankly, not to the likes of Apple, Google, Samsung, whoever. Huge difference between the likes of you and me, and as you say, Apple fans 361 on Instagram or whatever. They're both out there, but we know that we're not doing the same thing that they're doing, and I think kind of we've made our peace with the fact that that's the way the world is. But I was honestly quite shocked and disappointed to realize when this Google thing blew up, people out there do not know the difference. People were saying you cannot trust any review of Google because they say this, and I was sort of trying to push back a little bit in a friendly way, just saying, please note this comes from the Team Pixel side of things, which is completely separate to the regular review sampling and PR function of Google. But people are responding, quite, I suppose, understandably. How are we supposed to know who is on Team Pixel and who isn't? I mean, I don't know, maybe there's an argument that PC Pro, we now need to put at the top of every review. We did not agree to anything whatsoever in order to get our mitts on this kit.
I did see yesterday on an Ars Technica had an early preview of the Civilization 7 game, and right at the very top of the review, in the first paragraph in a highlighted box, was, we accepted flights from Baltimore to New York to take part in this thing, and we were given 2 days of early access. I was really impressed by that, because it sort of says, look, and we know this thing goes on. We take hospitality from some companies to go and see plants or visit factories and whatever. So not those kind of plants,
No,
Darren,
I'm momentarily confused.
So
Moonlighting for Gardener's World.
I'd actually be fully in favour of that kind of level of transparency, because at least it puts it out there, and then you let the reader decide if that's going to have some kind of unfair influence.
Well, I don't think it does. I haven't observed any influence. Certainly, I've done my fair share of travelling to conferences and so on, and it looks like my counterparts on other titles, I've never seen the slightest sniff of anybody, saying a processor is good when it's not, just because someone paid for dinner for them. But that kind of transparency, I think, does help encourage people understand what they're seeing and who they're dealing with.
John, final word to you.
I haven't been to press events in years. I mean, we'll discount CES as being something a bit different at NAB, but in terms of going off places funded by a manufacturer, go to Barcelona with Microsoft or whatever, haven't done that in 15, 18 years or something like this. I don't get invited to events, and I'm very happy with that. Because I'm only interested in the things that people actually ship these days, and I sleep very comfortable at night saying, I can tell you exactly what I think about this this particular banana yellow Samsung S24 Ultra because I went and bought it, and I'm telling you what I think about my Vision Pro because I went and bought it. And if someone doubts me, I'll quite happily wave the invoice in front of them. But I don't do reviews. I think the whole influencer market is rotten to the core. Some people out there will quite cheerfully say, "Oh, vendor X provided with this, but they didn't have any editorial influence over it," but then don't mention the fact that this may be thousands of pounds worth of hardware or whatever has been provided to them and usually not asked for back. And that's an income value that needs to be accounted for. And if they don't say nice things, then this manufacturer might not send them the next shiny toy down the line. So, I mean, it's all a nonsense, frankly.
John, can you confirm or deny that you are in the pay of Harley Davidson?
Well, I'm not. I'm wearing a Harley Davidson T-shirt. In fact, if I was to turn around, you can probably tell me which country it's from. Is it Tokyo on the back?
I'm going to say yes, but it's not.
Okay. One of the curious, strange things I do as a Harley Davidson owner is when I visit somewhere, I usually drop into the dealer and buy the local dealer T-shirt, and it's just a little crazy little nonsense thing that I do. So no, I'm not in the pay of Harley Davidson, thank you. And I bought my Harley Davidson outright 11 years ago, and in fact, Jeff on the channel has ridden it and seen it. So there you go.
All right, and I can confirm for anybody who is curious that it was from Las Vegas.
Oh, one of the Las
John's
Vegas
T-shirt.
dealers. Okay, there you go.
All right, thank you. Let's move on to the nibs, which are with Darian.
Yes, all three of them. First, there's good news for Linux fans. Linux has broken a record for the largest ever recorded desktop market share for Linux. I mean, obviously, this first half of this year, it managed to break up to 4.45% market share of desktop operating systems, which means it's a mere 68% behind Windows. But it's going in the right direction.
Okay, thank you. Nib number 2.
So you may recall GitHub a couple of years ago launched a feature called Copilot, some relation, which can autocomplete or correct code for you. And it was a bit controversial actually. Some people were saying, where does it get its snippets? Is this copyright safe? Other people were saying, is it a good idea for people to be producing code that they haven't actually handwritten themselves and may not know what does? But this new feature I think is a very good idea. It's called Copilot Autofix, and it uses AI to analyze your code and warn you about potential security risks, which I think is a brilliant idea because humans are terrible at thinking around all the many now ways that are known that people can attack, break into, exploit, overflow code which is written with the best of intentions. So I say 2 thumbs up to that.
Okay, and number 3.
New feature has been spotted in an upcoming version of Android. It's to do with screen recording, and I don't believe I don't have to be quite that cagey. I have never recorded the screen on any Android device, but I guess gamers and maybe educators do, and maybe we'll all be doing it a bit more in the future. Who knows? Anyway, there's a new flag in Chrome which will automatically conceal sensitive information, such as banking details or whatever, if your screen is being recorded. At the moment, as I say, this is just in Chrome, just on Android, and it's not actually available in the current version of Android. But I do like the idea that as we move into a world with more sharing and more connectivity and so on, the software can be smart enough to prevent you from accidentally sharing, what might be an embarrassing browser tab, for example.
So I think, Darren, and this is a little while ahead, but we know that NPUs are built into many phones these days as well. Mm-hmm. And we also know there is a close integration going on between Windows and Android. So there's every chance that will be built into the recall feature, into the recall in the coming years. I would not be at all surprised by that. And then you discover, because we all do our browsing over separate devices, don't we? So, did I see the photo of, who was the woman you talked about earlier? The actress?
Brie.
Yeah, her. Did I see her, on my phone, or was it on the desktop? You don't necessarily know, do you? So yeah, I can see why that actually could become relevant at some point in our lives. Anyway, thank you very much. Right, for the hot hardware of the week, it's going to be with Barry to talk about the quality of his webcam. No, it's not. So for people who are watching live on, because you can join us every Thursday, British time, 1 p.m, and you can see us on YouTube on the PC Pro channel, or you can. Are we still broadcasting on a Riverside address? Is it just YouTube now, Darian?
You can come to Riverside, but we're not paying any attention to the chat there, so I suggest you stick with YouTube or Discord.
Okay, so go to YouTube and join us at pcpro.link/discord and join in the merry fun, most of which has been spent today taking the mickey out of Barry's fuzzy webcam. Literally I can see no detail of him whatsoever, but I do prefer it that way. Anyway, hot hardware of the week. The real hot hardware of the week is what I'm holding in front of me now, which is the MSI QB NUC. NUC? NUC? Anyway, 1M. And this is MSI getting in on the NUC game. So I thought, until MSI called me and said, we've got this new product, I thought it was the Asus exclusive from now on, that Intel basically passed the baton, because they signed an agreement last year to say that Asus would be continuing to develop the NUCs into the future and would be marketing the existing NUCs. But it turns out that actually that was a non-exclusive agreement, and that MSI is quite happy to release a NUC of its own. So what is special or interesting about this? The first thing to say is that it looks exactly. And if I should have brought out one of my Intel NUCs that I've got behind me, because Barry, you've seen a few of these as well. This is exact. If it didn't have the MSI badge on it, then you would say that it was one. So what is nice about this one is that it's got two 2.5 gigabit Ethernet ports, so which has uses for media streaming, but also it has uses for out-of-band management. If you were going to roll out loads of these into your business, and it's very, very easy to pop one of these onto the back of a monitor. Because it's got the VESA mount there, so then you can actually just manage it remotely, and rather than having to go around to every single PC if you need to do so. And of course these are affordable. So it's available as a bare bones unit, or 3 bare bones unit, or as a complete PC. So the prices for the bare bone units start at £349, and that will get you a Core 3 100U processor. Naturally, Microsoft is making it very confusing what its different processor names mean, and really I would say that this is almost directly equivalent to one of the Core i3 1300U series processors from last year. It's had a minor upgrade, but it's still using the Raptor Lake architecture, not to get too deep into that, but basically it's very, very similar. But you have a choice of the core processor let me get them right. Core 5 processor 120U, Core 3 processor 100U, or Core 7 processor 150U, to use Intel's official naming. It's not as fast, that means, as some other machines that I've seen. So I saw a Geekom A8 mini PC a couple of months ago, and that had a Ryzen mobile chip in it. These are all mobile chips. And that was significantly faster in all the benchmarks. However, there's a certain point at which you can say, look, this it's going to be fast enough for everyone to be quite happy, and it certainly will be. I probably would steer clear of the Core 3, but personally, unless you're just going to use it for display signage or something very basic like that. But the Core 5 or the Core 7 will be plenty fast enough for existing uses, unless you want to play games, which it's really quite not very good at all. Okay, what else is there to say about this? Well, it's small. It doesn't make much noise. There is obviously fan cooling in there, but I've heard far noisier mini PCs, so you could very easily pop it somewhere and you wouldn't really notice it. The other thing is it can be powered by, it's got two Thunderbolt 4 ports, and let me put it near the camera. It's got two Thunderbolt 4 ports, and those can one of those can be used to actually charge it as well, because it needs up to 100 watts of charging. So alternatively, you can use the bundle kind of rat and tail charger that comes that is traditional, but you may find it easier, especially if you are connecting it to a monitor, just to use the Thunderbolt 4 connection to power it. It works perfectly fine because it doesn't require too much power to run. When I pushed it to its maximum, it took 61 watts, and in general it takes 15 watts. So a Thunderbolt connection will be absolutely fine. What other ports does it have? It's got two HDMIs. It's got 4 USB-A ports. It's got a micro SD slot. Basically, it's got everything you need. And then if you do decide to put it somewhere weird, then you can use this cable to kind of trail down. So you can switch it on if it's stuck behind your monitor, which can be quite useful.
What is that? Like a USB power button?
Effectively, it's not USB, but you plug it in.
What interface is it?
Sorry.
What interface does it use?
It's got, well, let's call it a proprietary interface. It's just it just needs a tiny amount of power, but yeah, that's what it looks like, Barry.
Interesting.
But I quite like that as an idea, and obviously this is a pretty upgradable system. If you buy it as a full unit, then it will come with Windows 11 Pro, and an SSD of either 512 gigabytes or a terabyte. I'm just going to take off the bottom now so you can actually see inside it if you wish. So for people who are watching on YouTube, you can see the insides of this device. Not much happening there. You've got two SODIMM sockets, and you've got the existing M.2 SSD covered by a heatsink, but you can see you've got a smaller M.2 2020-42 area there. So if you want to add a second, and on the reverse, sorry. On this, actually, there is a place to mount a 2.5-inch external SSD as well. Plus, you've got a Thunderbolt ports, which are very quick for attaching external storage. So there's lots of expansion from this tiny little thing. It's also got Wi-Fi 7 and Bluetooth 5.4. I just think overall, if you don't need a big hulking PC, for whatever reason, these things are priced well. And let me just tell you, the Core 7 one that I tested with a 1 terabyte SSD and 16 gigabytes of RAM, all pre-supplied, etc., that's £769 from Scan, which I would say is a pretty good price. And today, the Core 5 120U Scan happens to have a deal on it for $649, and that will be a perfectly good machine as well. So yes, I will take any questions from my fellow podcasters or from the floor.
What's the Ethernet speed?
2.5 gigabit Ethernet on both.
Okay, thank you.
Barry, any questions? You read the review.
Yeah. No questions, Your Honour. Your witness.
Okay. Darian?
Yeah, there's nothing really. I mean, we know what NUCs are. We know what they're good for. We know what they're bad for. This looks like a perfectly fine example of the genre, but I don't think unless there's some shocking new capability that you haven't mentioned, but I rather doubt it.
No, there isn't a shocking. I think the twin Ethernet ports actually do mark it out from the crowd. I think that's actually relatively unusual to have that.
Two of them, yes, it is.
But other than that, these things, there's only so much innovation you can do within such a small space. But I do think there's definitely a movement towards mini PCs. I think people actually do quite like them. And we will be doing, I'll actually write it, we'll be doing a mini PCs group test in the near future, where I'll do a full comparison with all the others. So yes, I'm trying to, Black Ears has mentioned on Discord server, Minis Forum. And so yes, I'm trying to get them in. There's B-Link also trying to get in. But they really what I'm trying to sell to you here is the idea of a new face in the NUC world and a very affordable range of laptops, of mini PCs. And I think this is a very good product, and I think it is worthy, your honour, of being hot hardware of the week.
I do actually have a question. Oh, no, I don't. Oh, that's wonderful. I was about to say, how fast are the USB ports? But they've actually properly marked SS10 on the 10 gigabit ones on the front. And so I can infer that the fact there is no such 10... Oh, no, there is a little 10 on the ones at the back as well. So I have all the information I need. Good work, MSI. It's really annoying when you see a USB socket and you don't know whether it's 5 gigabits or 4 times that speed. So that's pleasing to see.
Yeah, their labelling is really good, actually. And you're right, Darren. It's not always obvious, but they have made it pretty darn obvious what every single thing does. Even down to the combo 3.5mm at the front. If you buy these things, you don't know, is it just a headphone jack? But the fact they've got both symbols on there, it's a very small detail, I realise, but it is good attention to detail. So congratulations. All right, shall we do a poll?
Done.
Barry. Is this product, is the MSI, let me get the name right, is the MSI QB NUC God, I forgot its name, 1M.
1M.
Yes, 1M. Is it hot or not? Just say yes.
I mean, I like it. It's fine. I'm not sure I'd go as far as hot because it just doesn't do much that stands out. There are. I mean, we've seen some in the past from other manufacturers around that price that, come with proper AMD graphics and stuff. So I'm not hugely convinced. The other thing that struck me as you open that thing up is like how much space is in there, and should it even really need cooling? I don't know. Maybe that's part of just some of the price efficiencies, on components that get a little hotter and stuff. But it's a bit disappointing given how much room there is in there. And I know, airspace doesn't necessarily lead to cooling, but it's when you compare it to something like the Mac Mini, which is in a bigger form factor, I think, for the time being at least, but I don't believe it has any fans, or maybe it has fans, but you never hear them. Then,
well, that's ARM architecture as opposed to x86 architecture.
So maybe the next hot hardware in these NUCs is going to be not Intel processors, but the Qualcomm stuff, and maybe that's when we're going to see. But there is rumours, for example, of a new Mac Mini coming that is absolutely tiny, like properly mini. So I think this is a space that's going to see a bit more innovation actually over the next couple of years. So for the time being, I'm going to park this one in the nice but not quite hot parking spot.
All right, okay, thank you. Darian.
Yeah, so normally when we see a NUC, I go, as I think someone on Discord said, it's lovely, but I've got my Mac Mini and I'm so happy with that. I don't know why I would switch. But so the MSI QB NUC 1M, I noticed, you told me straight up, you told us all, that it's £769 with a terabyte of storage and 16 gigabytes of RAM, and you will not get a Mac Mini with those specifications for anywhere near that price. I also love that it has Wi-Fi 7. Apple doesn't have a Wi-Fi 7 anything at the moment, as far as I'm aware. And I do love a trailing power button. It is a little disappointing that it's only got the two USB Type-C sockets, which are also Thunderbolt ones, and everything else is Type A, which is very retrograde and a bit sad. But nevertheless, it's going to be maybe not quite as powerful as the Mac Mini on everything, but still, that's a decent PC in a lovely small format for a very reasonable price. So not for the first time, I'm going to say the NUC has won me over.
And don't forget, you get Windows 11 Pro rather than just Windows 11 Home as well.
Nobody's perfect.
John.
If this was 18 months ago, I would have said hot as hot as hot. But I take on board what Barry's saying about it being quite a big case for what's inside. I would be more impressed if it was Snapdragon X. I kind of feel that this product's time has slightly kind of come and gone, maybe, and not by much, by 12, 18 months or so. And although it seems entirely worthy with what it's doing, the 2.5 gig ports, the decent CPU, the memory expansion, and all of those things, by any reasonable status, it should be a hot. But I'm just finding it difficult to get myself into full hotness about it. So I'm afraid to say I'm going to have to flip and say not.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm going to give it a hot. And using the weight of the listener votes, I can say that this is, for once, it is a rare occasion, and I hope Lee Grant is taking notes in his official poll. This is a hot from a hot product. Officially, it's got the stamp. So thank you very much, everyone, for listening to this week's meandering noises. Until our next one in a week's time, I guess it's going to be goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Okay. 2:07. That's about standard, I think, for us.
Right, I've got to go. Sorry for the.
All right.
postprandial.
Yeah, thank you for being here, John. Appreciate it.
No worries. No worries.
Wow.
I'll just hit the leave button and see what happens. Is that okay, Darian?
Yeah, that's fine.
What's going to happen?
I don't know.
Well, it might destroy
Well, press
his
it then,
recording
for
or
God's
something.
sakes. There he goes. God, he went. The leave button really works. I'm going to give it a go. Hang on a sec. Where are we?
Okay, now Cole reckons we should use the post-amble to rate the podcast out of 10. Is that for us to rate it, or is it for others to rate it?
I'll give it a solid 7. I don't think it was
7?
spectacular. But I thought it was all right.
Tim, are you,
Cole
leaning
says David. Thanks, David.
are you leaning into your microphone now?
Me?
Yes, because you sound a lot better than your audio quality is much clearer and less reverby than it was earlier.
I don't know. I think it's probably outside fact. I don't feel like I'm doing anything particularly different.
Oh, that's so weird. Okay, well,
Skyloop, a solid 8. 3 out of 10. The Barry lens was dire.
It's
Yeah,
not
you
the
see.
lens. It's the same
it's
bloody
not. It's
camera.
the, it's the
It's
bandwidth.
the bandwidth.
Something is eating Barry's connection, but we didn't lose him, so we're not going back to the Zencaster days.
Okay, well, I think so. We've got. I'd say we're averaging out at a 6 because Cole's dragged us down.
Fair
I will
enough.
say it genuinely was actually one of the most contentious ones we've done in a very long time. I mean, the Mike Lynch stuff obviously is more sensitive than the sort of thing we normally touch on, and the business about influencers versus reviewers is a real goes to the heart of some
Yeah, you
proper
ungrateful
fundamental
bastards.
stuff.
Should be a 10.
It's good. I do think this is. I'm going to come back to that. You probably need to stop me talking about it actually. But the AI stuff, the disconnect, it's just. I find it bewildering.
Oh, you're going to wind Jeff up again. That's
Am I?
okay. Yeah.
This is lovely,
Okay.
but I've got masses to do before
Yeah,
we go
so
on.
have
Yeah,
I.
yeah, okay, all
on
right,
the
yeah,
weekend.
so
So,
it's
All the best.
All right, we're upping ourselves from 8 out of 10. This post chat is probably 10 out of 10. All right, thanks, guys.
least.
Cheers. Till next week.
Bye all.